Everything you think you know about clam chowder is probably wrong, and in New England, that mistake can genuinely start an argument. Today, we're exploring the city, the rivalry, and the century-old feud behind one of America's most debated soups. Grab a spoon, because this story starts right here on a foggy pier in Boston Harbor. Most people assume chowder is just chowder, a creamy soup with clams in it. End of story. But in New England, there are actually two completely different chowders, and only one of them is allowed to call itself the real thing, depending entirely on who you ask. The version most people picture first is New England clam chowder. Thick, white, and creamy, built on a base of milk or cream, potatoes, and salt pork. It's hearty, rich, and often thick enough to practically stand a spoon up in the bowl. Boston fishermen and coastal communities have served this exact style for generations, ladled out of enormous pots at harborside stands near the water. But travel just a few hours south to New York City, and you'll find something that looks nothing like it. Manhattan clam chowder swaps the cream entirely for a tomato-based broth, thin, reddish, and closer to a vegetable soup than anything resembling the Boston version. To New Englanders, this isn't just a different recipe, it's practically a betrayal of the entire concept of chowder itself. Here's where the story gets genuinely dramatic. Legend has it that back in 1939, a Maine state lawmaker was so offended by tomato-based chowder that he introduced a bill attempting to make it illegal to put tomatoes anywhere near a pot of clam chowder within state lines. Whether or not that exact bill ever actually passed, the story has been repeated in New England kitchens for decades as proof of just how seriously this rivalry gets taken. Walk into almost any seafood restaurant along the Boston waterfront today, and you'll still hear staff joke about Manhattan style being served across town, usually with a smile, but also usually with genuine pride that Boston does it the correct way. So why did two versions of the same basic dish end up so different in the first place? The answer traces back to immigration patterns along the entire East Coast. New England's version leans on dairy farming traditions brought over by English and other Northern European settlers who had easy access to cream and milk near the coast. Manhattan's tomato-based version likely developed alongside Portuguese and Italian immigrant communities in New York, who were far more accustomed to tomato-based broths in their own home cooking traditions. Neither version is technically more authentic than the other. They simply grew out of two different immigrant food cultures existing less than a day's travel apart. But try explaining that nuance to a lifelong Bostonian standing at a chowder counter, and you'll likely get a much simpler answer. Real chowder is white. Full stop. Walk along the Boston waterfront near Faneuil Hall, and you'll find chowder served almost everywhere, in sourdough bread bowls, in simple paper cups for tourists walking by, and in white ceramic bowls. At sit-down seafood restaurants that have operated for over a century. Some of these restaurants have served the same basic recipe since the 1800s, when chowder first became a practical way to feed fishermen using whatever the boats brought in that day. Today you can see photos of those original harborside chowder houses framed inside modern restaurants, hanging near the counter like living history. The debate over which version deserves to be called real chowder has never actually been settled, and honestly, it probably never will be. Cook-offs and chowder festivals happen across New England every year, with judges sampling dozens of variations, yet the white versus red argument somehow always resurfaces by the end of the night. It's the food of tourists walking along the harbor for the first time, and the comfort meal locals return to on cold winter days when the wind comes in hard off the Atlantic. It's eaten at outdoor picnic tables in summer and in steamy, crowded dining rooms in January, spoon in one hand and a piece of bread in the other. You'll see it served at food festivals throughout the summer. Chowder vendors lined up competing directly against each other for the title of best in the city. You'll see families order it as a starter before a full seafood dinner, treating it almost like a ritual before the main course even arrives. Even visitors who've never had chowder before somehow already know to expect the thick, creamy Boston version, without ever being told the Manhattan version even exists. Some of the oldest chowder houses in Boston have survived fires, economic downturns, and generations of ownership changes without ever once considering switching to the tomato-based version, regardless of how popular it might be just a few hours away. Locals will tell you that's not stubbornness, it's identity. The dish stayed remarkably consistent along the New England coast for nearly 2 centuries, even as immigration and food trends constantly reshaped the rest of American cuisine around it. Yet the classic Boston bowl remains exactly what it always was: cream, potatoes, salt pork, and clams, with tomatoes considered nothing short of an act of culinary rebellion. It's simple enough that any home cook could make it in under an hour, yet the rivalry around it has lasted for well over a century without any sign of slowing down. That contradiction, a humble soup fueling one of America's longest-running food feuds, might be the real secret behind Chowder's staying power. Walk along the harbor at sunset, and you'll still see steam rising from chowder pots as restaurants prepare for the dinner rush. Fishing boats return to the docks nearby, unaware they're arriving at the center of a debate that's outlasted most of them by decades. Locals argue about it casually over dinner, the same way they might argue about a football rivalry. Visitors taste one version, assume it's the only version, and leave completely unaware an entire tomato-based rebellion exists just a few hours south. So next time you take a bite of real Boston clam chowder, remember everything that stands behind it: the cream, the century-old feud, the immigrant roots on both sides of the argument, and generations of New Englanders who never once considered backing down. It's a small taste of a rivalry that never actually needed to be resolved. If you enjoyed exploring the story behind Boston clam chowder, let us know down in the comments below. Tell us which American city and its signature food we should explore together next. Until then, grab a spoon, pick a side, and we'll see you on the next story.